Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fiscal year 2023-2024 Annual Action Plan, the public input session for North Miami residents. As mandated by regulation, whenever as a grantee for HUD, we are required to have this meeting to get your input. So this is the opportunity for us to tell you what we're receiving for this year and what we're gonna use the money for. Here with me tonight, first of all, my name is Albert Bazil, Housing and Social Services Director. Here with me tonight, we have Ms. Yedi Foster, our Assistant Director. I have Ms. Frederick in the back, our Housing Administrator. I have Wallon Centil, our Housing Coordinator. And finally, my right hand, Ms. Diana Da Costa, she is the Assistant to the Director. I'm not planning to talk a lot. Ms. Da Costa is gonna cover the first part of the presentation, but before we went any further, I want to know if you guys need translation. For those of you who are not current in English, if you want translation, let us know. We can have, as we were doing the presentation, we can have someone assist in the translation. I don't see anybody raising their hand. I'm gonna invite Ms. Diana Da Costa to continue.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Da Costa, and I'll be doing the first half of the presentation. And so Ms. Bazil just went through the welcome and introductions. We'll be moving into the overview of the Housing and Social Services Department. We'll move on to the Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan. We'll also discuss a recap of the priorities for the Consolidated Plan and spending for the fiscal year 2020 to 2024. And for the last two items, we'll discuss the grant funding for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. And we'll go over what the next steps will be and the schedule. Okay, so the Housing and Social Services Department exists to serve the culturally diverse North Miami community by assuring that residents of the city of North Miami have access to more affordable, decent, safe, stable housing, as well as enhancing their quality of life and potential through diverse social activities. And this is made available to them specifically to the very low income and moderate income households and families. Moving on to a brief explanation of the Consolidated Plan. So the City of North Miami is a HUD grantee, and it receives funding from the CDBG and the home programs. The city, because it is a HUD grantee, is required to prepare a 5-year consolidated plan, which it has for the fiscal year 2020 to 2024. This plan includes the community's needs, priorities, and goals. And this is identified by stakeholders, and it's approved by the City Council as well as by HUD. Throughout these 5 years, the projects that are approved must remain consistent with the 5-year consolidated plan. If that's not done, then we'll have to do substantial amendments to the plan in order to remain in compliance. Now on to the annual action plan. So the city receives grants annually from the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is CDBG, and the Home Investment Partnerships Program, which we call HOME for short. And through these U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development / HUD programs, we receive funding. So for every year of the 5-year consolidated plan, HUD requires that we do a submission of an annual action plan. And the annual action plan identifies strategic projects and outputs for the use of the annual HUD allocation. Projects included in this annual action plan are implemented in line with the needs, priorities, and goals of the city as identified in the 5-year consolidated plan. Any changes in terms of these priorities, needs, the projects, the funding will require an amendment to the consolidated plan. And CDBG and home funds may be leveraged by other funds, such as private sector funds, state funds, local government, and other investments. So as a part of these plans, we have to engage in citizen participation strategy. So in the strategy, we have an opportunity to listen to a diverse set of stakeholders, including the residents of North Miami, business owners, community leaders, nonprofits, and for-profit sectors through meetings such as this, public meetings / workshops, through agency consultations. And once we have the inputs, we can draft our annual action plan, which then becomes available for commenting period for up to 30 days. That allows for community input even after public meetings such as this. The process accommodates persons with disabilities and persons with limited English skills. Any comments or questions at this point? Please go ahead. Yes, we're currently streaming live on all our platforms, Facebook Live, YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're... Okay, so we're streaming on other platforms except Facebook. We're on our website, we're on Nomi TV, YouTube Live, but I'm hearing there's a problem with Facebook. Okay?
I have a question. I came in late, but I think I got the piece where essentially the purpose of this meeting is to open it up to the public, where basically we provide input on funds that are available to the city,
Mm-hmm.
and you're basically listening to what we might want to invest in, right?
How to allocate the funds.
Allocate, got it.
And we haven't gotten to the allocation part of the presentation as yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'll move on to we'll move on to the priorities. And with that, Ms. Bazil will take over.
Thank you, Ms. Da Costa. I want to reiterate something because I think I have the question before we start the meeting, and following up on your question, I need to clarify. We're not talking about city funding in general. We are talking about funding received by the city for housing purposes. Some other activities fall under HUD, and that brings me to this slide here. When we did the consolidated plan back in 2020, 2024, this is how you guys who answered the survey prioritize our needs. Remember, keep in mind that those priorities was during COVID time. So at that time, business were closing, people couldn't, function. So at that time, economic development came number one. Number two, it's owner-occupied rehabilitation. Those are, I don't know if you guys are aware, if you are owners, North Miami have an old housing stock. most of the houses are pre-1978. So those houses, if you don't maintain them, even if you maintain them, you need to revamp them as we go. So there is a great need in this category. Number 3, that was rental housing. You guys see, I think you guys witnessed how the city deployed several phases in housing rental assistance. And I think somehow the CRA, our agency, provided some substantial assistance in rental assistance during the pandemic. Then there was public services. Those are services that are not provided by the city, but that we grant to community-based organization. And when you come to me, I can refer you to those people. For instance, if you come, you say, I need tutoring for my son. The city don't do it. I don't do it in my department, but I might have a grantee who offer this program. I can refer you to that grantee. On number 5, I think we have public facilities improvement. There is a small portion that we can devote specifically toward community center and public parks. For instance, back in 2020, I think we repaired the Thomas Sasso Pool on the west side. As we speak right now, I'm assisting, I think, the Ellen Enchanted Forest by repairing their roof. That's it. By repair the library, we have a project ongoing where we are upgrading the outlets and so forth. So basically, and at last, it's homeless prevention, but giving the limited funding that we had. That's why HUD reinforced. He asked us to basically set our priority. So we're gonna see how we did the allocation for this year, and this will be the reflection of how residents, you and I, will respond to the survey that we put out there back in 2020, 2021. You got some small definition here. Under economic development, most likely we are assisting small businesses, a micro enterprise. Owner occupied rehabilitation, we repair, we upgrade some houses. Affordable rental housing, it's really for people who are in need of rental assistance. Public services, I mentioned, we don't manage them, but we refer you to those partners. Public facilities is being done by the city, not by our housing department, but most likely in partnership with Parks and Rec, with the library, and some minor project with Public Works. And finally, the homeless prevention and special needs. Usually we don't devote a lot of funding toward this program, but this year with the home ARP funding that we receive from HUD, we had currently a program going on to prevent homelessness and help people get out of the street or remain in their house. This year, we received from HUD 1 million plus. I don't have the exact total. Comprised of $789,366 for CDBG, under CDBG. Under home, we have $352,458. And finally, we recaptured some funding totaling $83,159. So I don't think I need to explain to you. Ms. DaCosta already explained that we receive under the Community Development Block Grant 789, on the home 352 plus. So the recaptured funds, what is it? Most of the time when we do repair in resident houses, it is required that they remain in their house for at least 7 to 10 years. If for some reason they decide to sell or whatever the case is, and they don't respect what we call the affordability period, they then remain in the house during the affordability period, they need to pay us back. Most of our programs are grant, but the big owner-occupied rehabilitation, we treat it as a deferred loan. What is a deferred loan? It's a forgivable loan. So as the year pass, I'm decreasing your loan. So if I give you $7,000 You stay for 5 years. Every year I forgive you $1,000. So if after 5 years you want to sell, you will have to pay the money, the $2,000 back for the 2 remaining years to the city.
Didn't that used to be 5 years that you stayed in your house?
No, we have different, depending on the program is the time, the affordability period is different. The CRA is 5 years, the CDBG is 7 years, home is 10 years, depending on what program we are helping you. So when we recapture those fundings, what do? We just put it back into the program and assist someone else.
In my education, as that loan decreases,
Mm-hmm.
and the balance obviously goes down, the amount due starts to decrease, like, at a certain period, right? So let's say, like, it starts to decrease in November, I don't know, then that new figure goes to the homeowner and says, now, instead of paying us 500, you start to pay 400, and then 300, and then 200.
Now let me explain. The loan most of the time is a forgivable loan, and what we do, we forgive every year a certain portion. The perfect example, I give you $7,000 for 7 years. Year 1, if you want to sell your house, you don't owe $7,000, you owe $6,000 because you already stay in the house for 1 year. Year 2, you want to sell, you don't owe me $6,000, you owe me $5,000 because you already forgive you $2,000, and so forth.
Am I not making any payments to you?
No. That's why the only payment you do is once you don't stay for the affordable period. At that point, you have to pay back the program because we put it back in the program and help other residents. Because with this $83,000, we are able to actually assist another 2 residents. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So if you look at the bottom, we said that the consolidated plan is for 5 years. So we did 2020, 2021, 22, 23. This year is year 4. So next year is going to be our last year, and we have to go back again, sending survey, bring you into the room, get your input to see where our priority are. With the funding that we receive, this is how we propose, and this is a recommendation that we are making to City Council, and this is to you residents to know how we're gonna use that money. If you look at that money, 780, the subtotal 789,366. By regulation, the city is entitled to 20% to administer the program. We have to pay employee, we have to purchase, we have to pay a consultant and so forth. So that's the portion that we use, the program administration. Housing rehabilitation, that's the bigger trunk. That's the one that we use to help the people repair their house, bring them up to compliance, correct violation, correct safety issue. Public services, it's mandatory. In this grant, HUD make it a requirement for us to set aside 15% for those organizations that I told you we give the money, and when you come to me, you want some type of services, I can refer you to those people. And finally, we have public facilities where we are scheduled to repair another 2 pavilions at Enchanted Forest. This is this 40,000 for the upcoming year. So the recaptured funds in general, per HUD regulation, we can put it anywhere, but I can tell you from experience, there is so much demand for the housing rehabilitation. Most our recaptured funds go back to the housing rehabilitation. Under home, as opposed to CDBG, home only allow us 10% for program administration, and we use it for the same purpose. To pay employee, to pay the housing inspector, to pay consultant, for the sign you see in the street, for this meeting to happen, so anything that is related to those programs. A nice chunk is going to housing rehabilitation as well. Shodo, this is another set aside that is mandatory by HUD. It is mandatory that we set aside 15%, not to exceed 15%. Okay, this is this shoulder, and I can explain, I can give you more detail about this funding. And finally, the tenant-based rental assistance, we put only 15,000 just because I told you we have a tenant-based rental assistance going on right now to prevent homelessness and so forth. Under home, we recaptured $41,006.42. I'm repeating myself. Most of the time, our recaptured funds goes toward rehabilitation. That's where we have the most need. People are coming and ask for assistance. So basically, for this coming year, if we take the entitlement, the money that we received for this year, and we added the recaptured funds, we have available $224,982.53 available for those programs. I'm gonna let you ask your question, but let me tell you what's coming our way. This is one of the first workshop from you residents to give your input, but it's not the last. It is required. Not only that I have this workshop for you, but we have 2 public hearings. That's mean in a voting setting. So the first public hearing that we are gonna have is gonna be the Planning Commission. Please come back. If for some reason today I didn't hear your voice, you have an opportunity to have your voice heard on May the 2nd at the Planning Commission. They're not making decision, but they make recommendation. They call them the advisory board. So they can make recommendation, and I can tell you, for the past 4 years, I'm going in front of them. They have a say. They will tell you why we put this, why we don't put that, why this year we don't have it here. So they are very involved. They know the materials, they know the program, so they'll listen to you guys. Right after the Planning Commission, the document that we are going to present will be available online at the library and at City Hall. So if you are shy, you don't want to talk to me, you don't want to talk at the Planning Commission, you still can come. There is a sheet in the lobby where you can put, you don't have to put your name, it can be incognito. You can say, okay, we need more money for so-and-so. We need to put more money towards so-and-so. You're entitled to that, and hard want to see that you citizens are involved. Right after the 30 days, it's gonna run from May 15 to June 15. We are going to City Council on June 27 for the second public hearing. And this one is final. If you have something to say, you don't say it, it's not gonna happen. So that's the final vote on June 27. And if everything is approved, if there is changes, they can do it on the dais. We just have to go back and correct the document. They're entitled to do that. Council has the final say. Staff are doing recommendation. You guys are asking to make changes, but the council has the final say. And once it's approved by council, we have by August 15 to send it to HUD. If we miss the deadline, we lose the money. If we don't send it by August 15, there is no money for any housing project during that year. I think I say it all, and it's your time now to ask any question. Again, I'm gonna reiterate, if anybody want to ask their question in Creole, in Spanish, feel free. I got people here that can assist, and the floor is open. Any question?
Do you require specific projects where this funds should be allocated? That's one. Secondly, do you have a certain amount of signatures for needs that we require?
I need you to repeat the first part of the question for me.
The question is about projects.
Mm-hmm.
Do they require certain projects where that fund should be allocated?
Yes. Let me go back and show it to you.
Yes.
This is what we say were our priorities. So we cannot go and say we're gonna do, I don't know, we're gonna build an affordable housing. We don't have that here. So he has to go toward any project here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's part of it. I saw this, but I was asking you if there was a flexibility. That was the question. Is there flexibility? Let's say you don't have any project in this area, so do you have the flexibility to
towards something else, towards no. And Ms. Da Costa explained it in the first part of the presentation. If for any reason we're allocating funds outside those priorities, we have to go back and do a substantial amendment to our consolidated plan. Okay? Yes, sir.
The second part,
Second part, I'm sorry.
you mentioned, there's forms to the lobby, you expect people to sign or to complete, is that right?
No. Once the annual action plan, it's a document, it's an 85 page document. But basically what the document is saying, this is the money, this is how we intend to use it, and so forth. It all evolves around the money. So this plan, I'm gonna go back and say, okay, I heard the public, that's what they want. We're gonna present that to the planning commission. Let's say the planning commission asks us to put more money toward the tenant rental assistance. So we're gonna have to go back and fix that. So once we fix that, this document, this annual action plan, this 85 pages plus document will be available on the city website, will be available at the library and at City Hall. So on top of that, you can send an email to housing@northmiamifl.gov. We are required to follow up on those comments. So once you if you go into the lobby, you said, okay, I need more money toward tenant-based rental assistance. We have to report that to HUD, and we need to address it in the annual action plan. So it's not mandatory. If you don't have any comments, you don't have. But if you do have, it needs to be reported, and we need to adjust it. Sir?
Would you mind just going back to the priorities? So for me, those aren't projects, those are priorities, right?
Mhm.
So it means is,
Correct.
to the gentleman's point, these are the spaces where we're focusing on, right?
Correct.
So my question is, I think my eyesight, let me see, number one says rental housing, right?
No, not number one.
Or number, I can't see.
That's number three.
Number three?
Mhm.
Number three says rental housing. So if the input that we have is for something that will ultimately support rental housing, that would be a suggestion that we were able to do, right? So-
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
If in the long run, the output of it is in an effort to help and support rental housing, right?
And I'm gonna go further to your question. I'm gonna give you an example. I don't know if you notice here, it was not a priority. Sometimes one of the priority that come to us, it's money for first-time home buyer. During that time, it was not a priority. So you will see here, there is no money allocated for first-time home buyer. If it was a priority, this is something that you can raise. This is a question that you should raise. Why it was priority number one and you guys are not funding it? And you have a case, and this one is the perfect example. Economic development, right? It comes number one. So why are we not funding it? I'm not putting any money toward economic development. That's a good question, right? The reason is we still have COVID money that we are pushing out, and we have put some set aside last year that we are still not using. And in the best interest of the public and for the city as well, we need to spend the money. If we don't spend it, that means you don't need it. So we need to allocate the funding where there is a need and where we are spending the money. So some area we don't allocate, it's either we have money sitting here that we are currently disbursing, or the need has faded away, there is no need for it, we have to refocus, reshifting the money.
Because where my head is that there are a lot of residents who are owners that have opportunities to provide rental spaces, right, in terms of, a drop in the bucket in terms of the housing crisis, right?
Mhm.
And if I can, I don't know, provide housing for, 10 families, right? I would love to make a suggestion where I can get support from city where they could help me to do that.
No, you're talking about building
As
houses?
an example.
Okay.
As an example, right? So,
This one is a little bit too big for our age because we don't have enough funding to cover that.
well, no, not the construction.
Okay.
talking about construction, but I am talking about maybe some soft costs that are associated with that. I don't know.
No, the program doesn't call for that.
Okay.
This one doesn't call for, they call it capital, no, capital administration. It's like I'm giving you some money to help you support, you know, the administration of the business.
Right, let's just say like permits, I don't know, $5,000 to help with permits.
No, the program doesn't call for that. This one is really rental assistance targeting the renters.
Got it.
We want to keep the renters in the house. We don't want them to be in the street. We can have some, not rapid rehousing, it's like prevention to keep them in their home. Any other question? That's your chance. So if we don't have any question, I want to take the time to thank you all for coming. I want to thank staff for taking the time to put this together, to prepare that, to go out there and encourage you to come. I'm looking forward to seeing you all here on May the 2nd, and I'm waiting for you on June the 27th. I'm not sure I'm going to have time to put it on the radio for May 2nd, but for sure, you're going to get your invitation to come and say what you have to say on June 27th, because that's going to be your last chance. But my question for you now, do you guys find that the allocation respond to the needs that we identify, the way we allocate the money? Make sense? Okay. With that being said, I wish you all good night, and I thank Dunya for assisting and the entire staff. Have a good evening. Thank you all for coming.